right. Well, welcome everyone. My name is Meryl Fury. I am a registered nurse and co founder of Sage Circle Alliance. Today, we are on Sage Talk for Wicked Problems. This is our podcast for Sage Circle Alliance, where we look at wicked problems and come up with potential solutions. So, let me describe a little bit about a wicked problem. A wicked problem, the way we look at it, is a social issue. It's an issue that persists, even though most people would agree that is detrimental to health or the planet or human decency or compassion or the equality of all living beings. Wicked problems are gnarly. They're just plain difficult. They have tentacles that touch other issues and areas and are held in place by strange conflicting interests. Usually there's somebody or some entity that benefits from the problem being in existence, either financially or in power. And because of this, wicked problems are devilishly difficult to resolve. Today, we will be speaking with Jean Schumacher, who is a dear friend, someone I so deeply appreciate. And I'm so grateful that you're here, Jean. This is wonderful. She has her doctorate in education, and she has been teaching young minds about chemistry and environmental science for about 40 years. So we have a true expert in this field. And today our subject is, what about these toxins in our environment and how they are affecting our children? Welcome, Jean. So honored to have you today.
Thank you so much for having me in that wonderful introduction.
So welcome. So we're just going to jump right in. Jean and I know each other pretty well, and we can take off in flights of ideas and fancy, but for the purposes of this one, we're going to try and keep it narrowly focused. Okay, so let's start with how it all began for you, Jean. What inspired you to study the impact of environment and food-based toxins on children's health?
Well, having taught chemistry, number one, I had some brilliant chemistry teachers along the way, number one. But it wasn't until I really started diving into it, I was teaching advanced placement environmental science. And you start to learn about things like, for example, Love Canal. I don't know are you familiar with Love Canal?
Oh, yes. I lived in New Jersey during that time. So, yes.
All right. Well, for those of you who don't know about Love Canal, this was an area that was a chemical plant. And this chemical plant then was abandoned, sold, and this developer bought up the property and then built these lovely homes on it. And then everybody started getting sick when they realized that their house was built on top of a toxic dump. And then I started to realize the impact, for these environmental toxins. I mean, when you stop and think about it, since World War II, over 10,000 chemicals have been introduced into the environment. And it's pretty scary. Literally, we are walking chemical experiments. And when you look at our bodies, anything that's on our skin, in 26 seconds is in our bloodstream.
So when you say that, hold on. So you mean if I just put like a cream on my skin or a spray, is it just liquids or does it include powders or other things?
I would say mostly to be absorbed, it's got to be in some kind of like liquid creamy-ish state, But if powders and things are like that, stay on your skin because they can tend to fly off or whatever, it's not going to be as absorbed, I don't think. But I don't have data on that per se, but I do know like liquids and creams and things like that. I mean, that's why we use patches,
Right.
Those for drugs and things.
Yes, like nicotine patches or pain patches. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, sorry, I interrupted you. Please continue your talk.
That's okay. But I mean, I think that was my pivotal moment was to see that happening, like learn about these impacts. And that's just one of many studies of environmental impacts on people and humans. And so when you start to learn these things, and I think when I was teaching environmental science, the kids were like, is there anything good going on? Please give us some
It get
hope.
pretty dismal. Yes.
It is. I mean, when you start to study all these environmental impacts and things that are happening to us, it's just so sad on so many levels.
Yeah, it really is. It is. It's one of the things that, given that we talk about wicked problems on this particular podcast all the time, it can get to be pretty heavy. It really can when we look at what's going on in our environment and the way it plays out, particularly in children. It can get pretty heavy. Well, on that note, and without going teary-eyed on my part, mostly, can you share some of the most alarming trends that you've observed regarding how toxins influence children's physical and behavioral development?
Ooh. Okay, let me back up for a second and just say I was born in 1960. Okay, so not up there with the dinosaurs or anything, but I'm no spring chicken. But in my childhood, I knew every kid who went to our elementary school. They were in our neighborhood. We played. I never saw an autistic child, not one. It wasn't until the 1990s that I first saw my first autistic child in a school setting, environmental setting like that. Now, according to the CDC, it's 1 out of 36 children that are autistic. That is just autism. There's never mind other trends of other behavioral issues and that are developing. There's just so many, but I just think the autism is huge, because if you've ever been around an autistic child, oh my gosh, they need so much support to be able, because they can't function and handle themselves normally within society. They don't read societal cues that you're getting in terms of behavior and how to behave. They don't get it, and they lose it. And the sensory and auditory issues, like some kids just cannot be out in nature, or outside of their home, because they can't handle all the sensory input that's coming in, and they can't process it. And so you see that at one end of the spectrum, and you just go, oh my God, why?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one thing, that really made me stand up and go, what is going on here between the environmental toxins that we're being exposed to on a day-to-day basis? I mean, from personal care products to cleaning products. My brother, literally, he cleans like a man. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. He mixed chlorine and ammonia. Yes. Yeah. And almost died.
Yes. Not funny.
No.
Actually, not funny.
No, it is not. And he passed out, and thankfully my sister-in-law was home at the time and heard him go, because he's not small. He's, a big man. He went clunk, and she heard the clunk, and she's like, honey, what was that? Honey? And went in, and she's petite, compared to him. He's like a moose next to her. Mm-hmm. And she ran into the bathroom. I was like, and dragged him out, closed the door, and that saved his life.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
him out of the bathroom. Yeah. So, these chemicals that we're being exposed to that we have no idea about is so, it's overwhelming. Yeah. And I remember, back in the day when I would use, when I was younger, using the foaming bath cleaning product. You're in the bathroom and you're trying not to breathe. Your body is telling you, do not breathe this. Right. And yeah, I mean, I would spray, and then I'd close the door, turn the fan on, open the window, and run out of the bathroom, and come back. And, but the problem with that is all that stuff is going down the drain. And so when all those chemicals that go back to the water processing plant, most of these chemicals are very tiny molecules. They're so small. And so in a water purification plant, they typically, and there's different ones, but more or less along this line, this is what happens. And so you see water going down the drain. When it gets to the water purification plant, it goes through this process of filtration just to get the big chunks out. Then they throw a ton of chlorine on it to kill any bacteria. Then they usually bubble it to try and get some of the chlorine out, which still stays in it. So some of the water really tastes chlorinated. And then, because this water is the only federally regulated water that's coming to you, they have to balance it in terms of pH. It's very acidic at this point.
Mm.
And so they'll add things like sodium hydroxide, which is like Drano. So they're putting Drano back into the water to try and balance it to get the pH back up. So you're still getting all of these chemicals that went down the drain. You're drinking all of that, so it
Wow.
comes back in. So there's that. But just circling back to the autism, I know, if you've not seen this, this is from the Institute of Responsible Technology by Jeffrey Smith, who is
Mhm.
just amazing. He did a movie called Secret Ingredients.
Yes, I saw that movie. That was amazing.
Powerful. And what really stood out to me was there was the one family that's kind of woven through the story is, these two, it was a husband and wife. They were both one of those crazy people that do those, the triathlete, run, swim, fly, whatever, those crazy people. They got married, had 3 kids. And out of the 5 of them, they had over 21 health issues.
Right.
And I think it was the oldest child was so severely autistic by age 4 could not speak and could only point and go
Right.
and basically said, "This is welcome to the world of your child. He will never get better. This is it. This is it." And so she changed her diet. It got rid of the toxins because there's so much toxins in our food, in what we're dealing with. And she got rid of it. She cleaned up her diet, cleaned up the toxins, and her child, by age, I think he was in 2nd grade, so 4 years later, was in a normal classroom, no IEP, individual education plan, none of that. He was in playing sports. He was playing an instrument, which for autistic children is, they can't do that,
You know what? I want to go back to, because I saw that movie. That was an amazing movie, actually. And I looked for it recently. It used to be available free, like through YouTube or through that website. Last time I looked, which was just maybe 4 or 5 months ago, it wasn't available anymore. It had been taken down. But if anybody does get a chance to see that movie, amazing documentary. Secret Ingredients.
And I saw this in my classroom day in and day out, especially in the last, I would say, like 10 years or so, when I was, still in the classroom. And I think, over the years, when I first started teaching chemistry, I did not teach chemistry the way I did at the end of my career because they couldn't handle it. In the beginning, I was
Your entire classroom couldn't, you say?
Oh yeah. I mean, for sure. I mean, there'd be kids who could get it, but generally I was teaching regular chemistry. The other kids who could get more advanced concepts were in the higher level classes. But first step was to take out the math from the chemistry. They were like, "Oh, we're just going to teach concepts." I'm sorry, what? We're just going to teach the concepts without the math? Really? Okay. And then as I was starting to teach the concepts, I had to keep dumbing it down again and again and again because they were having very difficult time understanding the concepts even. And I saw this happening. That, and then the amount of children that were out I was teaching 5 sections, and on any given day, I never had 100% attendance for years. And I was kids out for weeks at a time for mental health, for digestive issues that, the doctors don't know what it is, and it's like, and I had to like literally put duct tape across my mouth because I knew what it was.
Yeah.
So, it's tough.
It is tough. You were saying too that there are 10,000 chemicals in our environment right now.
Yeah.
Last I heard, there were like that many in the food supply.
Yeah.
Never mind the stuff that's not allowed in the food supply.
I know.
Yeah, so we are exposed to extreme and unnecessary and dangerous amounts of untested chemicals in our environment and in our food supply. And yes, it looks very much like they have these effects on our children. And
Yes.
it can start from before they're born.
Oh,
So-
absolutely. In the womb.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
let's go with the next question. So what role do you see in education and policy and how that could make a difference. How could that affect or reduce a child's exposure to harmful toxins?
Well, you would hope with education, but I have to say, in the science, we're not, in school, in this classroom setting, they're not getting this information on any level. And very few kids would take environmental science when they got to high school, or, because that's usually when it was introduced, is in high school. So I don't see much in terms of the classroom per se where the children are. And I don't see it coming from, top down on any level. So, I mean, we have to do a kind of grassroots level, like kind of what we're doing now is making people aware of what these things are. And I mean, again, I have to, my hat's off to Jeffrey Smith, the Institute for Responsible Technology, where you can find that movie, Secret Ingredients, and other movies like he's got Seeds of Deception, Genetic Roulette, 7 reasons why gene editing is dangerous and unpredictable. So it's, getting in front of the right education, because you can go on the internet and find, everything from soup to nuts to say how wonderful this is and how wonderful, gene editing. Like that to me is scary on so many levels. I did an interview with Jeffrey Smith back in the day, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up when he started telling me about some of these experiments that didn't make it out. Like we came close to not being here. Like seriously. Wow. That if that had gotten out into the environment, we wouldn't be here. Anyway, so I mean, I think just becoming more educated yourself and taking that on. But most people don't understand the problem and just go on. Like, I guess I grew up thinking along the way that if something is on the shelf, that it means it's okay for humans to use. No, it's not. It's on many levels. There is absolutely no regulation in this country. Zero. None. In terms of these toxins. They can use anything they want, and they do. And over in Europe, they have what's called the precautionary principle, and you have to prove before you can start marketing and selling something that it's not going to be harmful to man. You have to prove that. And if you look at like companies like that are from the US and have products over in Europe, it's completely different. It's completely same packaging, and then you look on the back and you look at the ingredients, and it's like, whoa.
Yes, we've seen many examples. You can Google those and find images of, let's say, instant oatmeal in the UK versus instant oatmeal packaging, right, and ingredients in the United States, or so many different examples of that same thing.
Yeah.
It's
sad on so many levels. But we're going up. It's like pushing water uphill. We're up against so many factors, and it comes down to one thing. You have to vote with your dollar. You have to vote with your dollar. This is true.
Now, speaking of voting, so great for a segue right there. So now I am not going to go into politics for this. And we just came off of our presidential election, and that went how it went. One of the things I found, or still find interesting, is that RFK Jr. Switched which party he was aligned with, and is now seems to be, we can never tell how it really will play out, but there's a chance that he could be a health and human services higher up administrative person. I don't know if he's going to lead that or have some other kind of role, but he has certainly been promoting the importance of getting the chemicals and toxins out of the diet and out of the environment. That is certainly a bright spot to me. I don't know if it'll really go that way. Things change by the moment, but that certainly seems promising. Do you have any thoughts on how something like that from the federal level might actually play out?
No clue, because you're going up against everybody. You're going up against it's an uphill battle on so many levels, and you're going to be shot down because there's so many people that have vested interests in keeping it as is.
Yes.
And
a lot of money involved.
Oh my gosh, it's ridiculous, the amount of this, and it doesn't matter as long as I have money in my pocket. And it's like, okay, It doesn't matter if you have that money in your pocket if you don't have your health.
True.
And they just don't get it. They just
Yeah.
don't get it.
Yeah.
And the things that are happening to us right now that are being allowed to happen, it's just mind-boggling. And and I think trying to be able to navigate that, I think he's going to have a tough row to hoe.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he's going to be definitely up against the same huge international interests that he's been up against all along. I don't see that changing.
Right.
But true enough, like you said, Jean, we can vote with our dollars, and we do not have to, knowledge is power. So knowing what toxins are in the environment and ways to avoid them, and by all means, please avoid them for your children, if for nothing else, no one else. Knowing that much is super important, right? Really priceless information, literally.
Absolutely. That's why we do this.
You're not kidding. This, I know for me and for Jean, it wakes us up in the morning and it puts us to bed at night. This is what we focus on, is keeping ourselves and our other people and animals and the planet balanced and as healthy as we can. Most definitely. So I'm looking at my list of questions, sort of picking here. So tell me, what are some of the most misunderstood or overlooked sources of toxins in the average environment that parents could be aware of?
Okay. Just looking around in the home, a lot of people like to do candles. Those are pretty toxic, most of them, especially the ones that have the fragrances. Fragrance in general tends to hide chemicals, because when you look at the ingredient list, you see the term fragrance. And that word fragrance usually hides other chemicals that they don't want you to know about. And they use the term, oh, well, it's proprietary. I don't want my competitors to know what's in this. And it's like, shut up. I can take that to an analytical chemist and I can tell you in 10 minutes what it is. Stop it. So they use that term fragrance to hide, especially chemicals like phthalates, which are massive endocrine disruptors. Our whole body runs on hormones, and this is what regulates it all. And so you're exposing yourself. And things like laundry detergent, Bounce, those kinds of things, dryer sheets, they contain a lot of chemicals. And especially when it's on your clothing, it's a double whammy, because it's not only sitting against your skin and you're absorbing that, but you're also breathing it. And I had someone who came to stay at my house, and she walked in the door and I could literally smell those chemicals ahead of her as she's walking through the door.
Oh, goodness.
And that first night, she was downstairs in her room, and I was with the door closed, and I was in my room upstairs, door closed. I could still smell her wafting through the house. It was crazy. And I think what is disturbing on a couple levels is, first of all, I said to her, do you not smell that? How strong that is? She goes, what are you talking about? She couldn't smell it. She had neuroadapted. So she couldn't smell that anymore on herself. And I was like, oh my gosh. And then when she left, I went to go wash the sheets. It took 3 washings. Now, she just slept on those sheets in her pajamas.
Right.
And it took 3 washings to get that smell out. Wow. I mean, even just going down the aisle in the grocery store, where all the laundry detergents and things like that are, when you go down that aisle, I'll have a headache by the time I get to the other end of the aisle, because of all and that's just wafting, coming through the plastic containers.
Right. Those are all sealed packages. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And it's still, or going by the stores in the mall. I really feel bad for those people who have to work in those environments, because you're smelling this all the time.
Yes.
So I think those kinds of things, anything that has scent. So, if there's one takeaway that you can take away from this, is to make sure anything that you're using is scent free. Okay. So get away from those plug-ins, those candles, laundry detergents. Make sure you're buying things that are unscented. Really.
And so what you're saying is the ones that have the scents are very often, if not almost always, Some sort of endocrine disruptor. Is that what it
Yeah.
is?
Yeah,
Mm,
there's a lot of them that contain these chemicals, and there's so many massive endocrine disruptors. It's crazy. And literally we're walking chemical experiments
yeah.
because most of these things are fat soluble. And not to go into too much chemistry, so there's basically two types of chemicals: fat soluble, water soluble.
Right.
So if it's water soluble, you're still going to go through the liver, the kidneys, and then you pee it out. But it's fat soluble. Guess where it's going? It's going into your fat particles, and these become like little fat toxic dumps, for lack of a better term.
Mm,
And you start to accumulate all these chemicals. And literally, we don't know. You're walking chemical experiments. So what happens when this chemical and this chemical combine together in this fat cell? We don't know.
mm,
We don't know.
right.
There's so much that's happening right now that is so disturbing because we're being, and you can't pinpoint it to say this one specific chemical did this or
Mhm.
this product did this, because we're exposed to so many toxins all the time.
Right.
And
And
so
even harder on, like I was thinking as you were describing your friend and her bouncy self, right? It's these fragrances that she was wearing that she had grown used to and numb to. Imagine that on an infant, and it is often, right? We often use these kind of chemicals to wash our clothes. I mean, who doesn't? Would be the
right.
question, right? But if you
Well,
have a child who is that tiny, or a toddler, or even 5, 6, 7-year-old little bodies, being exposed to those kind of chemicals as it's laying on their skin for the entire day, and then they go to bed and it's on their bed sheets, it's in their bedclothes, it's in their washcloths when they wash their face. That's a lot of impact, a lot of exposure to unknown results from chemicals.
well, think about this, especially for children, right? They're developing very, very quickly, and they're going through massive cell division. And it's constant, it's constant, it's constant, because they're growing. That's how they grow. They continually divide and continue to reproduce cells. You have, as an adult, if you survive to adulthood, you have the ability to repair some changes in your DNA. You have the ability to fix that. But what happens is when children get exposed to these chemicals or things like that, their DNA can change, and it's now being copied so quickly that they can't see it. And which is one of the reasons why we're seeing such an increase in children's, cancer in children, is
Mm,
because their body does not have the ability to be able to correct these errors because they're reproducing so quickly. So yeah. Oof. Wow.
yeah. So tell us another few of the toxins that maybe our audience might not be aware of. They could not think about, but are pretty common in the everyday environment.
Um well, I think the chemicals, in the cleaning products that you're using, a lot of those chemicals are so toxic. Things like if you're doing any kind of painting and stuff that use those kind of chemicals, like turpentine, things like that. Those can be pretty toxic to you. They say, "Oh, use in a ventilated area," and it's like, okay, why is that? Should I
Mm,
be using a gas mask? But I think the other thing is in the kitchen, we're being exposed to a lot of chemicals there too, in our food. And I think that is something that we really need to be more adamant about. Like, for example, they're using glyphosate to dry crops, so that they can get it to market quicker. And it's like,
that is
I'm
the
sorry, what?
craziest thing ever. That is crazy.
Yeah,
So just this particular aspect of this subject drives me
right.
nuts.
I
So
know.
here you go out and spend extra money to buy organic oats. Those oats could have been sprayed with glyphosate to dry them.
I don't think it's the organic.
No?
No, I think it's just the regular.
Okay.
Because organic has to go through pretty strict testing and requirements.
I would like to know, because I had read, and of course, reading doesn't mean it's gospel or true, but I had read that there is a certain amount of chemicals that the definition of organic had changed, and
Okay.
Does not necessarily mean if it says organic, it doesn't mean it's 100% organic. So before I go spreading rumors that are not true, I will research that and get back to you. But yeah.
No, but just adding those kind of things into the food per se, it's like, why?
Mhm.
Anyway, again, it comes
Exactly.
down to money. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So between the pesticides and herbicides that remain on the food, and then there is the chemical called appeal. Do you know anything about that one?
No.
Okay, so appeal came out. I'm sure they've been testing it on the food for a long time. I'm pretty sure because I noticed changes in the way our vegetables don't rot.
Hmm.
They don't rot the way they did when you and I were children.
Right.
Um, Now they dehydrate if you sit them on the counter. They just like shrivel up and get wrinkly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oranges do, lemons just get dried out. The rind gets hard, but it's still juicy on the inside, but the rind is hard and dry. Or little tomatoes, cherry tomatoes, grape tomatoes, just shrivel down and look like little red raisins. They're very bizarre looking things. So, appeal is a chemical that is supposedly colorless and tasteless, and supposedly also derived from other vegetables. And it is applied to both organic and non organically grown vegetables. And it is to keep them fresh longer so that, berries picked in California can be sprayed with appeal and trucked all the way across to where I live in Wisconsin or where you live in Cape Cod and still look like they just got picked. That is what appeal does. There is a basic one called appeal, and then there's another one called organappeal, which is for the organic vegetables. And it is just for that,
Hmm.
just to make sure that they can travel cross country. Now, what that does to the human body when we consume it, we still don't know, I'm sure. It hasn't been around that long, so we don't know.
And again, it interacts with other chemicals that we don't
Right.
know what the
That's right.
reaction is going to be.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So best answer is stay as close to organic or grow your own. And I know that's a lot to take on.
Yep.
Um,
Or doing things locally,
yeah,
eating as much local as you can because you know where the produce is coming from and you know how they're growing it. And
right.
they can answer
Farmers
your
markets
question.
might be a
Farm, yeah,
better choice. Yeah, yeah.
right.
Because even, like I said, I'm in Wisconsin. We're a big farming state here, and we have, lots of apples and cranberries, peaches. We grow all kind of stuff in Wisconsin. I'm sure that the farmers want their produce to stay fresh as long as possible. In fact, when I first heard about appeal, I kind of did a little of my own reconnaissance, so I went to the local grocery stores and I asked them, "Do you know anything about this chemical? Is it on the produce here?" First of all, no one had heard of it. And when I was able to speak to somebody who was willing to think about it for more than 3 seconds, he was the produce manager of a large grocery store here. And his response was, "We would never know because we get our produce from 45 or 50 different farmers, and all that gets funneled into the larger wholesalers. And we would have no idea what farm was using what, or if they were or were not." So,
No,
yeah.
and there's no testing done.
No, no requirement. No
Yeah.
requirement. So, yeah, look for that though. There was a time I used to see little stickers on avocados in particular that would say appeal, but I haven't seen the stickers in a while. So I'm not, I wonder, are they not labeling it anymore? Or are they not using it? I'm not sure. So, question about the difference between what happens in one neighborhood compared to what happens in another neighborhood, right? So we know lower income, lower socioeconomic status neighborhoods, whole zip codes sometimes, where getting health promoting food, getting fresh fruits and vegetables is very difficult. Some of
Yeah.
those neighborhoods are only dealing with buying from the local mom and pop store or the bodega, or I know people who shop at gas stations, right, to get their food. Do you have any sense of the impact that fresh fruit, vegetable, with as little toxins as possible, the availability of that, what is the impact that that has depending on neighborhood or economic status?
Well, I mean, when you're buying these processed foods, which is what you're going to find, like especially like in places that you're talking about, like these food deserts, they're going to contain so many chemicals. And I think what is disturbing to me on so many levels is that people have become used to eating this as food, and it's not food, it's food like substances, and it is having huge impacts on us without any question. So I think using like the environmental working group, they have what's called the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen. You may be in a food desert, but you certainly can order on Amazon, and get beans and rice, things like that are some of the cheapest foods, but are going to be the best foods for you. And that's going to be, I think, one of the best options on many levels is, Amazon. I mean, being able to buy from Amazon and being able to buy things that are as close to being unprocessed, as you can get. Because you're certainly not going to in a gas station find beans and rice. You're not going to find that. So at least you can order those kinds of things. But, being able to get to that is, you should make that a mission, is the fruits and vegetables. And very little of it is getting into, kids think fruit roll-ups are like, I'm eating my fruit. No, you're not.
Yes, fruit
protein.
snacks. Fruit
And
snacks are not fruit.
No, but these, an early exposure to these toxins in these products. I mean, there's so many chemicals in these things that have, like, just for example, this is one thing that really just makes my mind just go, is girls are starting their periods much earlier.
Mhm.
Okay. Back in the day, it used to be 15, 16 years of age. Now, on average, there was a study just recently published in JAMA that they based their data on like something like 71,000 people that they collected from 1995 to 2005 that show girls now getting their periods on average at 11.
Oh my goodness.
And then girls going under 11 has doubled in that time period, okay? And girls 9 and under that group has doubled as well in that time period, okay, of starting their periods earlier. Now think about that. That 8, 9 years of age, that's second or third grade. Think back to where you were mentally in second and third grade. You are not ready for that level of puberty to happen in your body. You're not ready.
Right.
Mentally, emotionally, physically, you're just not.
Right.
And that's just one significant change that we've seen in women, which is, again, disturbing on so many levels.
Right.
Yeah.
So would you think that, not to split hairs too far, but would you think that that is as much toxins, or is that more like the level of hormones that we also see in the food?
Well, two factors. One is, yes, the hormones that we're seeing, because when you think about like cow milk, you are literally consuming the lactating fluid of another species. So when you look at it in that perspective, that is designed to take a baby cow, from birth to like 600 pounds in, 6 months. So there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of growth factors in there, and shocker, we're starting to see impacts on us. So I think there's part of that. We're starting to see a lot of hormones in the animals that we're eating, in the dairy that we're consuming. We're seeing those hormones. But on the other hand, this is also an impact where you're having these chemicals that are endocrine disruptors. And the endocrine system regulates all of the hormones that are flowing through your body. So, yeah, we're getting it from every angle.
Yeah.
And then we're shocked to find out children are starting their periods at 8 or 9 years of age. Shocked.
Yes. And, okay, I'm a female. I'm proud to say, right? Happy to say I've been proud to be a female my whole life this time around. Um, and when I look at the changes, this is dicey stuff right here. I don't mean to offend anyone, but when we look at the changes in our political landscape, and we see that there are quite a few states in the nation that now are tightly regulating what kind of healthcare females can access around reproductive health and pregnancy management and things like this. I would be and I'm putting this sort of, I'm putting things together like beads on a string, right? So we have this change in our political environment. We have 10-year-olds having their period, which means they can get pregnant and do. Often not because they want to. I'm sure they're not thinking about that. But somebody is chasing them or imposing themselves on these young girls. A 10-year-old gets pregnant and has no recourse in some states except to have the baby. This is quite a dilemma, quite a situation to be in, quite a situation.
Yeah.
I don't want to go too much further down that particular berry path, but that is something to consider. And especially in areas like the lower socioeconomic areas, right? Where life is already hard enough. Chaotic living can be a challenge. And I'm not saying all people who have, low socioeconomic status or they live in an under-resourced area are living in chaos. I'm not saying that, right? But we know that in a chaotic environment, if it's under-resourced and limited incomes, and then the girls are could get stuck in situations like that, it would just be devastating. So I was a public health nurse for a long time. And one of the statistics we used to quote when we would go into schools and we would do reproductive health education, sex education, we called it back then, was basically a young woman who gets pregnant and has a child before she finishes high school and is unmarried and has, limited resources, is going to be dealing with impoverished circumstances for many, 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 many years. Many, many, many. I don't want to say forever, but many, many.
Yes.
Yeah. Something we have to do. We have to do better about taking care of our children. And if it is in the form of keeping toxins out of their life and out of their bodies, that seems like a small price to pay. And important. Okay, one last question. I'm sorry, I just went off on there I was, standing on my soapbox. Terribly sorry. No, I'm sure this is such a big subject and it's so far reaching. The breadth and the depth and the gravity are just really, this is such a powerful subject. So many parents might feel overwhelmed by the idea of eliminating toxins and chemicals from the child's lives. What would you say are the most important first steps that a parent or a grandparent could take?
Your cell phone.
Oh, I was like, my cell phone? What about my cell phone? Okay, you're answering my question. Okay, go ahead.
Your cell phone. Because there's hope. Because there is some, first of all, you've got a tremendous amount of information at your fingertips. And I want to share with you an app that I have nothing to do with. I have no connections, but I use it all the time. It's called Yuka. Y-U-K-A, Yuka or Yucca, however you want to say it, tomato. But this is an amazing app, Y-U-K-A, and it looks like a little carrot is their little logo. And what it does is it measures on a scale of 0 to 100 different, they have personal care products, they have cleaning products, they have food. So you can scan the barcode, you can open up the app and then you scan the barcode and then it measures and it tells you if it's in their database, and they have a very broad and very rich database. It will tell you on a scale of 0 to 100, and there are some zeros, just saying. There are some things that are not even registered as, healthy on any level.
And that's
And
what the zero is the worst.
0 is the worst.
Okay.
So you're looking for products that are at least, like, think of it going back to high school, A, B, C, or D.
Right.
We're looking
A
for things
50
in the
is still
90s,
a failure, right?
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're looking for things in the 90s, and there are things out there. So using that app, in the beginning, it'll be a little bit of cumbersome because you're like, I remember when we had grandkids coming to visit. So I was going into the grocery store looking for baby things. That's not normally my habitat. I'm not buying baby stuff. It's a long time ago in a land far, far away. So the grandchildren are coming and I'm looking for things to get for them, that we can have on hand. And I'm going through and I was shocked. Almost all of them were like 30%, 30 out of 100, 50 out of 100. I mean, I was just shocked because they make it sound so healthy. It's broccoli and whatever. And yeah, there may be a whiff of some broccoli in there, but the rest of this stuff is garbage. And this is what you're feeding your child, to try and develop them. But it's also the same thing for personal care products. I mean, I think back to the day, Johnson & Johnson used to use, formaldehyde in their shampoo. Formaldehyde that you're putting on a brain. I mean, a lot of shampoos today contain neurotoxins, toxins that are toxic to the brain. Where are we putting shampoo? On our head. And we wonder why we have issues and problems.
Right.
But using this app, in the beginning, it'll be a little bit of cumbersome because you'll be sitting there in the grocery store going, yeah, no, putting that back, yeah, no, putting that back, and trying and looking for it. But once you find that product, then it's good. You check, okay, I can buy that one. But here's the good news is most of the products that you want to be buying don't have labels, don't have barcodes.
Yes. They're called apples and bananas and strawberries and blackberries and things like that, right?
And vegetables and and all that good stuff. But if you do have to, you are an environment, start opening your eyes up and educating yourself and using this app, because not only does it give the score, but then it breaks it down and it tells you why this is not good. And they have a little eye with a circle around it for more information, because it tells you what chemicals are in it. And then you can go on and learn more information about that chemical and that product. But basically, you're looking for things that are in the 90s, that you want to, either for personal care products or for consumption as well. Because I remember looking at this one in my group, I have the Plant-Based Academy. Somebody was showing, we were practicing label reading, and we looked at one of these, wraps. Almost all the wraps, have high amounts of oil and salt, in addition to preservatives and other chemicals. So we were looking at this app, and on the front, it says, oh my God, it's plant-based, it's this, it's that, it has so much protein, it has all these, and on the front of the label, it looks wonderful. Well, that's all marketing. And then we looked at it on Yuka, and it was like a 30, it's like, really? It's that bad? Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So when you start to look at what the quality of the food is, and the personal care products and environmental toxins, cleaning products and things like that, you can use this app. It's a beacon. And I am very happy that it's there. I agree with a lot of their recommendations, and so I'm pleased that it's there. I'm pleased that it's, and it's still free at this point.
Yeah.
We have a paid version, but the free version works just perfect, and you start to use that. And that's all I can say, is because when you start to vote with your dollars, and companies are like, why aren't people buying this stuff anymore? Oh, could it be that this has toxins in it and people don't want it anymore because they're getting educated?
Right.
When we vote with our dollars, that's when change is going to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. If I were to answer that same question, first steps, that's a great one, using an app when you're in the store, and keeping in mind that the product lines or companies get sold
Yeah.
So what is clean and acceptable and a 95 on yucca today, in 6 months or a year from now, it might not be, right? A lot of the multinational and mega corporations look for these small corporations to buy up, and then we'll change the formulation. So an app like yucca could be helpful in staying abreast of what's changing. And of course, reading labels is always important. Um, I think if it was me answering that question, I would say 2 things. Like you said, avoid the fragrances,
Yeah.
right? Scented candles, things like that. And I think it's so powerful to remove dairy from the diet. So powerful. We are so indoctrinated to give our children milk and cheese and ice cream, of course, and yogurt and kefir and all of these things. And they are a different type of, and Jean, correct me, I'm going to steal some terminology, but they're a different type of human hormone disruptor. It's a different thing, right? We're adding hormones from another animal that we don't need, well past the age of needing any,
Right.
like that. And it's wreaking havoc on the human body.
On many levels.
Yeah. Yeah.
I saw this when I was working with Deborah Shapiro. We did the Pregnancy Advantage to try and help women to have healthier babies. And it was one of the things that we saw again and again and again that were stopping women from getting pregnant or having massive, health issues in terms of that was stopping them from getting pregnant. All again, going back to the dairy. And once you got the dairy out, oh, hey, it's a miracle. We got pregnant, So it's cleaning out the body and getting it ready, but it has so many impacts. These hormones are just absolutely so pervasive throughout. It's incredible.
Yeah. I would. I'm actually allergic to animal milk, and for a while that was very sad because that meant I couldn't eat ice cream, I couldn't eat cheese. That was, But then I realized what a huge gift that is. So if in fact you're somebody who is normal and does not have lactase persistent in your system, that would be normal. Be grateful for that you don't have the capacity to consume and digest dairy milk, because it's not a food for humans. It is a food to grow baby cows to be massively large adult cows in very short order. So it's very cool. Well, Jean, we have come to the end of our questions and our time. Is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap it up?
I think just taking time to educate yourself. I think that's one of the biggest things, because nowhere along this way did I learn all of this. I had to stop and take the time to learn it myself. And I think you're worth it. Your health is worth working for, and certainly your child's health is worth working for. And as a mother, and now a grandmother, I definitely want to make sure that my, continue with my children, but also my grandchildren have access to, the healthiest products around available, for food, for environmental toxins, all of that. So, I think educating yourself and understanding that using this app, Yucca, is going to be a really helpful step. And then shopping where they don't need the barcodes is
Right.
going to be one of the best things that you can do.
Right.
So,
well, thank you. So important, so valuable, this information. Not a normal conversation, not typically what people talk about. And
you and I, we talk about it all the time, I know.
Yeah, right. A missing conversation in the average day, for sure. So thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all your knowledge and experience. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time on Sage Talk for Wicked Problems. Bye-bye.